You know that feeling. It's late. The house is quiet. And your phone, sitting there on the nightstand, suddenly lights up. Your heart does a little jump, doesn't it? Before you even see the name. It's an instinct. A tiny, primal jolt of what now? We have this profound, wired relationship with our phones. They're an extension of us. So what happens when that connection becomes unnatural? When the voice on the other end isn't a telemarketer or a wrong number, but something that simply shouldn't be. Welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is the Unexplained Archive. Today, we're dialing into a phenomenon that sends a chill down the spine of the digital age, using the very tool we hold closest, the telephone. We're exploring the case of the long-distance ghost. This isn't about creaky floorboards in an old mansion. This is about a haunting that travels at the speed of light, crossing continents and time zones, to whisper directly into your ear. I'm an engineer by training, an entrepreneur by choice, and a storyteller at heart. And this story fascinates me because it sits right at that unsettling intersection of technology and the timeless human experience of the uncanny. Our story begins not with a smartphone, but with the classic landline. The year is 1996, in a small, unassuming town in the American Midwest. A woman named Sarah, not her real name, lived in a perfectly ordinary house with her husband and 2 young children. The phone rang one evening, just after dinner. Sarah answered. There was a faint, rhythmic static, like the sound of the ocean heard through a seashell, but metallic. And then, a voice. A young boy's voice, clear as day, saying, "Mom? I'm scared. Come get me." Then the line went dead. Sarah's blood ran cold. Her children were both safe in the next room. She dismissed it as a prank, though a cruel one. But the calls kept coming. Always the same voice, the same plea. "Mom, I'm scared. Come get me." The number, when she used caller ID, came up as a series of zeros, or sometimes her own home number. Frustrated and terrified, she finally had the line traced by the phone company. The technician was baffled. The signal, he said, wasn't routing through the normal switching stations. It was as if it was coming from nowhere. And then, during one call, Sarah heard something new in the background of the static. The faint, mournful sound of a steam whistle. A train. She'd never given it a thought before. But when she mentioned it to her elderly neighbor, the woman turned pale. The house, it turned out, was built on land that was once near a railroad crossing. In 1928, a young boy had been struck and killed there while walking home from school. His name was Timothy. His last words, whispered to his mother as she cradled him, were reportedly, "I'm scared." This is a classic template for what paranormal researchers call a residual haunting, but transmitted through a telephone line. The emotional trauma, the energy of that moment, somehow imprinted not on a location's atmosphere, but on its frequency. It's as if the despair of that instant found a way to record itself onto a signal that the modern world accidentally plays back. As an engineer, my mind immediately races to explanations. Crossed wires, a glitch in the switching system, pareidolia, where our brain finds patterns in randomness. But the specificity is haunting. The voice, the train whistle, the callback number being the victim's own home. It feels less like a glitch and more like a message, desperately trying to complete a circuit that was severed nearly a century ago. But the phenomenon isn't confined to the past. It evolved. With the advent of cell phones, the stories changed. Now, the ghosts weren't tied to a landline, but to a person. There are countless accounts, from all over the world, of people receiving calls or texts from loved ones who had just died. A wife gets a "good morning, love" text from her husband's phone hours after his sudden passing. A phone that was sealed in a plastic bag at the coroner's office. A son receives a voicemail of his deceased father singing his favorite birthday song, left on a day that isn't his birthday, from a number that should be disconnected. I spoke to a woman from Dhaka, a friend of a friend, who shared her story. Her grandmother, who raised her, passed away in Bangladesh. 2 days later, sitting in her apartment here in New York, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her grandmother's Dhaka landline. Heart pounding, she answered. All she heard was the distinct, familiar sound of her grandmother's ceiling fan, that specific, slightly wobbly whirl, and the faint scent of sandalwood incense seemed to fill the room for just a second. Then silence. The line was dead. When she called the number back, her uncle answered. The landline phone, he confirmed, had been unplugged since the day she died, sitting on a shelf. He hadn't touched it. These stories are personal. They're intimate, and they defy our logical understanding of how communication works. A signal is a physical thing. It requires power, a path, a protocol. When these elements are absent, what are we hearing? Is it a psychic phenomenon, where grief and connection somehow project itself through the medium we're most attuned to? Or is it, as some theorists suggest, that time isn't linear the way we perceive it, and these calls are literal leaks, brief, terrifying connections across the fabric of time itself? A call from 1928 accidentally routing through 1996. A final moment of love pushing through from one side of existence to the other, hijacking the nearest available transmitter. What strikes me most, as someone who builds things for the modern world, is the consistent metaphor. The telephone line, the cellular network, they're our web of connection. They're designed to bridge distance, to make the far feel near. And in these stories, that's exactly what happens, but in a profoundly wrong way. The distance being bridged isn't spatial. It's existential. The technology becomes a conduit for a connection it was never meant to hold. It's like using a fiber optic cable to siphon a ghost. The tool works, but the result is terrifying. So what do we do with this? We live in a world saturated with signals. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, radio waves, an invisible symphony of data constantly flowing through us. If emotions, memories, traumatic events can imprint on a place, the idea that they could imprint on a frequency in that place doesn't seem entirely far-fetched to me. Perhaps it's not the phone that's haunted. Perhaps we've simply built the perfect device to listen to a haunting that was always there, whispering in the static of the world. The next time your phone rings from an unknown number in the dead of night, you'll probably still answer. It's what we do. But maybe, for a second, you'll hesitate. You'll remember that the voice on the other end carries more than just sound. It carries a history. It might carry a plea or a farewell, traveling a distance we can't map, along a frequency of pure fear, or perhaps of love refusing to be disconnected. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Unexplained Archive. If these stories resonated with you, if they made you look at your phone just a little differently, I'd be so grateful if you'd share the show with someone else who loves a good mystery. You can find more episodes and dive deeper into the archives at our production home, Light Knot Studios. That's https://www.lightknotstudios.com. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. Until next time, keep listening carefully.